So today on K-Talk Radio 1640 AM, I have a special guest who will be calling in from Chicago. Some of you may know him because he is a national public speaker. He comes to Salt Lake all the time. People go out to see him all the time. His name is John Dessauer, and he is a multifamily expert. He does a lot of everything from retail spaces to restaurants to single families to multifamily, but he's kind of known around the country as the multifamily investor. In fact, the New York Post, Donald Trump, our president, had made a statement in the New York Post that anybody who's looking to get involved in real estate needs to hear John Dessauer speak because of his knowledge, because of his expertise. And so luckily, I happen to be friends with John. I went to Haiti with John on a humanitarian trip. Me and my wife went with John to Haiti probably about 13, 14 years ago, and he was kind enough to basically be on our show today. So if you've ever wanted to hear how somebody had a 9-to-5 job and hated it and ended up going into real estate and not just getting in and succeeding but killing it, you're definitely going to want to listen to today's show because John is a wealth of knowledge, a super cool guy. And what I love about John is he not only knows real estate really, really well, but he's also a great, great speaker when it comes to reprogramming your brain, motivating, finding the reasons why one would want to achieve their goals. Not just set a goal, but actually work towards achieving it, because a lot of people set a goal, but very few people achieve the goal. So definitely stay tuned, listen to the show. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Good morning, everyone. You are listening to K-Talk Radio 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and today we have a very special guest by the name of John Dessauer, who we have called in, who's been kind enough to allow us to call him in from Chicago. Now, we're going to be going over this show, talking about the starting up in real estate and how to go big time, like our guest, John Dessauer. He is probably one of the biggest investors I personally know. He's a national public speaker. There's probably people on this radio show that have actually seen him speak. If you've ever attended a real estate conference, there's a good chance you've seen John on stage. We will be discussing how he went from his first investment to now where he's doing huge apartment buildings. We'll be hearing about a nightmare story and the lesson one can learn. And John's mindset is one of the strongest mindsets I've ever met. And so I'm going to have John share tips on how he sets goals and crushes those goals. You know, a lot of people can set a goal. Very few people execute what it takes to get to the goal, which means even less people achieve the goal. So how do people stay motivated on a large long-term goal? John's going to go over some tips with that and so much more. You know, probably about 13, 14 years ago, John and I actually even went to Haiti together. We were part of the Caring House Project. We went down there. My wife and I had contributed to the building of 2 homes down in Haiti for less fortunate situations that are down in Haiti. And John was on that trip. I got to meet John's daughter. It was really fun. So, John, I don't know if you can hear me right now, but thank you so much for joining me today.
I can hear you. How are you, Yoshi?
I
can hear your voice.
Oh, thank you. I'm great. Thank you. I am great. And I'm going to tell the listeners a little bit about you. And so this could take a while because John has got quite the resume. But I wanted to first thank you for being on the show. So this is who you guys are about to listen to. So John has bought foreclosures, short sales, single-family houses by the dozens. He's done fix and flips, bought properties directly from banks, other financial institutions. He has bought multi-family units by the hundreds. He has bought office buildings, retail center, designed and created a successful restaurant, and has done several design and construction projects in the residential market. He has negotiated with some of the wealthiest men on the planet. I know some of those stories. He's one of the stories is a billionaire. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. His largest real estate deal was $14 million. John's smallest deal was $9,000. He once bought a deal for $3.1 million, and 18 months later turned it into $5.6. Love to hear a little bit about that. And has done several types of deals like this. I know a little bit, just having heard John speak myself. I've been fortunate enough to even share the stage with John around the country, and I get to hear his stories, and I know a little on how he takes these value adds, and I'd love for the listeners to also hear how you go from 3.1 to 5.6 in 18 months. This is really cool. Donald Trump, our president, stated in the New York Post that John was a real estate expert and someone that you must meet. John has personally coached and consulted everyone from factory workers to doctors to professional athletes. He has made over $1 million in 4 different companies. He has also written 4 books, hosted a national radio show on Sirius XM, and has spoken in front of hundreds of thousands of people. His audience have mostly been made up of people looking to learn from his experience, because he has a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. So, John, if we can dive into this. Actually, John, do you remember when we went to Haiti it was about 13, 14 years ago, wasn't it?
I do. What was interesting about that is during my travels, I always, I run into people from all over the world, and when I run into someone from Haiti, I talk about the fact that, I've been to that country. I've been all over that country, actually. And I always go back to that story on the trip with you because my daughter was there. And it was for those of you who haven't been to Haiti, it's jarring, to say the least, to get there because of the challenges financially that the people there have. And I'll never forget that trip. So, yeah, I do remember that.
Yes, it was definitely eye-opening for my wife and I, and something we'll never forget. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so, well, John, I've got some questions here that I'd love to ask. I know a little bit more about your story, but it's so inspiring to me, which is why, I'd asked you to please be a part of our show so that our listeners here can hear how you went from this 9-to-5 job to going out on your own and crushing that company and then getting involved in real estate. Do you mind sharing what that transition looked like when you were a 9-to-5er going then into the entrepreneur, background and basically crushing it from there? The rest is history.
Yeah, man, as we all had family over, I'm sure, all your listeners, for Thanksgiving. I'm thinking how old I am. when I'm thinking back to these things, first and foremost, I'm no different than probably every listener on your listening right now. And what I did was, I did what everybody was told to do and go to school, and I went to a good school, and I graduated with a degree in biology and a degree in business. I know that's a unique combination, but when I got out into the corporate world, it wasn't really something that I figured that I would stay at long term because I just didn't enjoy it. And then as I get older, as I mentioned before, as I get older, one of the things I realize is whether you're talking about creating a business, getting involved in real estate, doing anything, something with your family, make sure that you are enjoying it. I have an uncle that is 102.
Wow.
And he's a great guy. At 102, he's still doing things that you wouldn't think that, I may not be doing in 5 years, let alone 102.
Right.
But, the message that I get from him, the message that I start to realize as I get older and I start to have kids, grandkids, and things like that, is you have to enjoy what you're doing, because if you don't, then the process of being an entrepreneur is a lot harder. The gradient is a lot steeper if you don't enjoy it. And so a lot of people say, I'm going to do that because, there's money in that. Real estate is one of those things. Or I'm going to do that because, I can, I'm going to get on a radio show. Don't do it for that. Do it for the enjoyment. And that's it's almost a cliche thing, but you don't realize how important that statement is and true that statement is until you do get older. So I got out in the working world, didn't like it, and I remember when I walked into my boss's office, his name was Russ, and said, basically, I'm going to do something completely different. I was in the environmental field at the time, and I was in the corporate world for that, and I said, I'm going to do something completely different. He was somewhat shocked because he was like, John, your numbers are great, you're doing, he's really questioning why I'm making this decision. And no one can make that, by the way, no one can make that decision but you. I mean, that's a really tough thing to do. If you decide to leave your job, your position, you've got some explaining to do probably to your family or to your colleagues or friends or even your superiors, but no one can make that decision but you. If you feel good with that and you have not motivation, and we talk about motivation a lot, but more inspiration. Motivation is wasted. This is something I get from Frank McKinney, Yoshi.
Yes.
But motivation is wasted if you're not inspired by something. And motivation will leave you in a day or two, but inspiration is something that really stays with you. And I was just inspired to create and do something on my own and do something a little bit different than what I was told to do, not because I was rebellious, but because I just knew that there was something better. And so that was really the start or reason why I left the corporate world and decided to do something different.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. One of the things that I read on your website, and I'm going off memory, so you might need to clarify it, but something that you said about everything about your successes, your failures, and the reason why I love that is because you're absolutely right. When you go out and become an entrepreneur, there are so many failures that lead to the success that if you don't love what you do, you're going to just quit, because who loves to do something they don't do and fail at it over and over? Did I get that quote kind of right?
Yeah, I travel a lot. Either it's working at events, seminar events, or speaking, or even just with my family travels.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm amazed at how more people don't talk about how much they've failed. Either, I don't know, maybe they're embarrassed by it or what, but that's like where, you really kind of understand yourself as a person. I think it kind of shows you the pathway to your future. I think that, your failures, and again, this is a cliche that people say a lot, but how many people actually do this and take action on this? Yeah, I failed like so many times it's not even funny. And I think that you get, every time I failed, I was like, for a moment, I was like, this is terrible. This sucks. I'm gonna give up. I'm the worst person on the planet. And for me anyway, it takes just a little bit of time to kind of regain my thoughts, and you kind of do forensics on what happened. And it's in those forensics that what actually happened here. What were the scientific decisions that I made that was a reaction from those decisions, and I get a product or a result. What were the steps that I took that I shouldn't have taken?
Right.
That's the forensics that go into that. And that's where you learn. Like, once you do that, you'll never do that again.
Right.
And I know you said you have the nightmare story segment coming up, so I've got a story for that. But you learn, I'll never do that again. And sometimes it puts you behind. It puts you back a little bit. And, it's hard as it may sound, you just have to kind of understand the process and enjoy it, and then take your action step from there. That's the hardest part. It's not finishing, it's starting after you make a mistake. How can you get off the canvas floor when you get knocked out? Can you do things like that? Think about, about every book that you read.
Yes.
Our lives are a book. And if you want to read a really good book, or watch a really good movie, there's drama, there's there's negativity, there's mistakes, there's like life-changing, jarring moments. And when you're watching that movie and you're reading that book, your emotions get so tied into that, and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And you're heightened. Your senses are heightened. You're thinking about, you're looking forward to what's happening next because you're watching the movie. If you're in the movie, your emotions are changed even further. You're like, I'm not going to move. This just happened to me. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to take any action. So when you do make a mistake, make sure that you tell yourself, you're just watching the movie or you're just reading the book. You're not in the book.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for me, at least, that I think that it seems to help when I do make a mistake, little or big, that I can say, hey, listen, I'm just reading this book. I'm just watching this movie.
Right.
We're not actually in it, even though our minds are telling us we are. So hopefully that helps.
Absolutely. Ironically, you talked about you failed a ton. I failed a ton. And it actually really helped me get immune to failure. You already know this, John, but for the listeners, I was an aspiring actor for approximately 17 years in New York City, and I auditioned a lot, and I didn't get the roles a lot. And, eventually you get immune to not getting called back, and before you know it, you're just going out there and just trying because you're no longer afraid of failure. You failed so many times, and to be honest, that was probably some of the best foundation to me becoming an entrepreneur, is having that 17 years of acting background. I did get some opportunities and some gigs and some working jobs that paid okay, but the most part is I failed most of my acting career, and it really helped once I became an entrepreneur, because it was very normal at that point for me to not always be successful. So yeah, that's what that when I read your quote, everything about your success is in regards to your failures, it just really resonated with me. I really loved it. Well, awesome. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your first investment? Obviously, you've now quit your job and you're going to go out there and now you're going to buy, your very first real estate investment. The beginning of your entrepreneurship is at its infant stage. I know you started a company already, but now you're starting to buy real estate. Can you share a little bit about how that looked?
Yeah. So what was interesting is I grew up in South Chicago, and I live not too far from there now, but over the state line in Northwest Indiana. A couple reasons for that. Schools are better, taxes are lower, things like that. But
awesome.
When I did get to Northwest Indiana, I was kind of marveled by a couple things. Number one, growing up in the south suburbs of Chicago, when you say Indiana, even though it's like literally 5 miles away, it's like a whole nother planet, right?
Right.
And so when I got to Indiana and living, and I'm raising a family and things like that, and I'm looking at real estate, it was just different. It was just, there was a different mentality, there was a different price point, there was all kinds of these things. And so when I chose the area that I was going to live in, and I was starting to build my other company, and I made the conscious decision to invest in real estate. There was this street, and and it was a street in the name of the city was Crown Point. You guys can look it up if you want. But Crown Point sounds like a really beautiful town, and it is. It's like if you ever go back to the movie Back to the Future.
Okay.
With oh shoot, what's his name?
Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox.
No, shoot. I'll look. Michael J. Fox. I'm sorry. Yes, Michael J. Fox. You got it.
Michael Jordan.
Look at the set of when the clock tower and the downtown. That's Crown Point. It's like in Yoshi. You've been there.
Yes.
You can attest to that.
Yes.
But,
gorgeous.
So there was this street there, and I said, if any property comes up on this street, I'm going to buy it. This is my first property.
Okay.
Lo and behold, I'm driving down the street. A guy, the real estate agent is pounding the sign in the front yard for sale. It was a duplex, so it was right up my alley. I pulled immediately over. I knew nothing about that. I sounded like a real novice here. I knew nothing about the property. I knew nothing about the price. I didn't even know the real estate agent. I pulled over. I hopped out of my car, and I said, listen, I'm going to buy this property. He probably thought I was a stalker or a nut or something. I said, hey, I want to buy this property. And he was such a nice guy. His name's Jim. I know him now well. And Jim was like, okay. He's never had someone approach him. But that kind of resolved before. You know, if I had a sales contract in my pocket, I probably would have filled it out at that moment. But I said I was going to buy the property. It was interesting because it was a duplex. The woman that owned it was, you know, in her 80s. Her children were sending her to a assisted living facility in Wisconsin. She had owned the property with a twin sister. One twin lived in one of the units, the other twin lived in the other. It was freaking out because they were married to twin brothers. Freaking out, you know. I'm thinking all the kids look alike, you know. But
that's amazing.
It was interesting because I negotiated that deal with really 80% bank financing and 20% seller financing. So I had to have the thing 100% financed. But what I didn't realize is, you know, one of the twin sisters had passed away. So the other twin had put just somebody in the unit just to, you know, cut the grass and take care of the place and just charging, you know, minimal rent, $300 in a $750 market. And then the woman that I bought the duplex from, she moved to the assisted living facility, so I had a vacant unit. And even though I came to the closing table with no money, you know, as 30, 45 days rolled around, I had to pull money out of my pocket to cover the expenses and the mortgage payment. That really wasn't, you know, that was a mistake. It wasn't a huge mistake, but it was a mistake that I had to recover from. But I learned from that, and that was my first entrance into real estate investing.
That's amazing that your very first transaction, and that's, I actually know this story, and that's why I wanted you to tell it, it's amazing that your first transaction you ever did was creatively financed with 100%. I mean, you used the bank's money for 80. How did you even know to ask the sellers for 20%? Had you read Rich Dad Poor Dad or something?
I was reading everything. So it's like I didn't even know what I was doing. I told them it was so crazy because I got the bank said, okay, we're going to give you 80%. And then I went to the seller, like as an afterthought, and I said, hey, I'm going to give you 80% of this purchase price. I think it was $140,000 at the time. I'm going to give you 80% of $140,000, and I'm going to have you carry 20% of that, which is $28,000, for about 2 years. And she was 80-some years old. I don't even know if she totally understood what I was saying, but she nodded her head yes. I looked at her real estate agent, Jim, which I didn't even have one. I guess I was using Jim. And he was nodding his head, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. I went back to my bank, and I went back to my bank like a day or two before closing, which was another mistake. And I said, hey, listen, I just want to let you know, the seller is going to contribute to my part of the down payment. They're going to hold 20% in a mortgage. I don't have to come up with that. That's cool, right? And it was just like this naive thing, and this was, 20-some years ago. And they were like, yeah, I guess that would work. You know, I remember the loan officer there that I was working with, that she was kind of new as well. And she's like, yeah, I mean, I don't see any problem with that. Lo and behold, I went to closing. I didn't have to bring any money to closing. I actually got a check, I think, at closing. And that was it. That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Sometimes when you don't know, it works out better than when you're like all polished and you have all these, all this experience and things like that.
Right. Excellent.
But I did end up making a mistake, so I don't know how good that worked out.
Well, like you said, it wasn't a big mistake, and it got you started, which is the most important thing, and you got off the canvas, like you mentioned earlier. So that's great.
Yeah.
So, from there, advance however many years, I was reading your bio, the largest transaction, and it may have changed by now, but it said that the largest transaction you've done was a $14 million project. I'm assuming that's the biggest multifamily, or it could be, I have no idea, if it might have been a strip mall for all I know, but fast forward so many years, can you tell us about all of a sudden, now you're getting into the big boy game, right? Now you're getting these 3 million, 5 million, 14 million transactions. How long did it take for you to realize, hey, I'm gonna move up to the major leagues?
When I first started, I didn't. My goal was like 10 units. I really wasn't totally focused on real estate, even though I liked it. I was actually building my environmental company at the time, and I said, hey, if I can get to 10 units and have that supplement what I'm doing, from an income standpoint, that would be great. And then I got to 10 units fairly quickly. My second purchase after the duplex was an 8-unit building, and then I bought a 10-unit building, and then a 30-unit building. And when I got to, let me see here, the math there, that's 50, but actually when I got to between 40 and 50, I had all my monthly expenses covered, and I was like, what the heck am I doing? I'm killing myself building this other business, which I ended up building, and that turned out really good. But from the real estate standpoint, I thought, man, this is fantastic. I've got lenders giving me money for the majority of the purchase for the building. I got my tenants going to their 9 to 5, and that's covering my monthly expenses on the building and my mortgage payment, and I have money left over to cover my personal expenses. At the time, I was like, this is unbelievable. I'm going to keep going until I'm have the most real estate in the whole planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as I got bigger, though, I realized a couple things. Number one, you got to think about what's going on in the market, like what's happening in the market, because that'll dictate what you're doing. It's kind of like over this holiday weekend, I was watching some college basketball. And I played in college, and one of the things I admire is when that point guard is dribbling the ball down the floor on a fast break. And so what they're monitoring is lanes that are opening up, going to the basket, and how fast they're pushing the defense, and do they slow up and run the offense, or that type of thing, because they're taking what the defense is giving them. And football, the same way, and other sports as well. But in real estate investing, and in being an entrepreneur in general, you've got to look at what the market is giving you. And what do I mean by that? I mean, what's happening in the lending environment, what's happening in the overall business environment, what's happening in the rental space, real estate overall, what's happening there. So just because I was rolling pretty quickly and got to 40, 50 units fairly quickly, the market was giving me that.
Right.
Of course, like in 2008, the market changed, right?
Yeah.
So the defense that I was playing, it changed on me, so I had to change. And so that's one of the things that I look at. And as I started to get bigger, the other thing I realized was not only that you got to see what the market is giving you at that time, but you really got to understand what you're buying and how you're buying it, and more importantly, what you're going to do with it. Because in real estate, if you're not working that real estate investment to drive its equity, to drive its value, so that you can pull that new equity out and go use that for your next purchase, then you're really missing the boat here. Because not only should you buy it right, but you have a distinct advantage with real estate and the businesses, by the way. I know you probably have a lot of entrepreneurs here. The same thing with businesses. If you're not driving equity in that business so that you can take that new equity out or use that to invest in new areas, you're really missing out on what investing is, and this idea of things like compound interest and things like that. That's really where the rubber hits the road, and it's probably the reason that a lot of people fail is they're not doing that activity.
Got it. Very valuable stuff. Excellent. John, that's awesome. We're going to take a quick commercial break, 30 seconds here, and then we're going to have you tell us the nightmare story. So if you're paying attention, you don't want to leave. So stay tuned. We're going to go on a quick commercial break, and can't wait to hear the nightmares. I don't even know what you're going to tell. I don't. Usually my guests give me a little insight on the nightmare story, but I don't know anything about your nightmare story, so I'm very anxious to hear it. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We're going to cut over to commercial break. Actually, let's see here. I realized, Mohammed, that... Hold on, John. 1 second. I realized that my commercial break is in my backpack. Okay, now we're cutting to commercial break. Please, Mohammed, thank you. With smartphones and technology making life a little easier, the Snap Leash has also been designed to make life a little easier for you and your pup. Whether you're out on a stroll in the park or possibly a walk through the city or maybe even a hike up in the mountains, the Snap Leash is the perfect leash for you. The Snap Leash can easily and conveniently convert into 7 leashes in one. The Snap Leash is the most convenient leash in the world. What other leash do you know that is 7 leashes in one? With the Snap Leash having appearances on the Today Show in New York City, TV 47 in Dallas, Texas, and ABC 4 on Midday, Utah, you are definitely going to want to take a peek at what the Snap Leash can do for you and your best friend. Make life a little easier for you and your pup and visit www.snapleash.com today. All right, we are back to the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. We have our very special guest, John Dessauer from Chicago. John, so, you know, the nightmare story is one of my favorite segments because I get to learn from other people's mistakes. I've surely made enough nightmare stories for myself to learn from. So, if you don't mind diving into your story, I'd love to hear your nightmare story.
Yeah. By the way, I was listening to the commercial. We used the Snap Leash all weekend with our dog.
Oh, nice!
You know that, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, it could be a nightmare if you're walking your dog without. So, yeah. The nightmare story, I mean, I've got so many I can go to. I guess this would be one of them because it's a nice segue from the last topic we were talking about, and that's getting, scaling and growing bigger. I bought a property from a guy that had deep pockets, very wealthy, and this is when I was starting to get bigger and buying, 100-unit complexes and things like that. And this guy was very, very well-to-do, and I structured the deal in such a way that by the time that we got to closing, I had put very little money down. This is years after I got started, and I started to hone my skills and using different techniques where I could lower the amount of down payment. And I remember going to the closing table we're outside of Indianapolis, and it was a 6-foot table, but it seemed like 12 or 16 feet long because this guy had deep pockets. He had an assistant with him. He had their attorneys with him, and I'm just this little real estate investor down on the other end. And he's looking at the closing table, and he's looking at the closing statement, and he's slapping the paper. I don't know if your listeners can vision this in their minds. Looking at a piece of paper and then slapping the paper with their back hand, and they're looking at me going, "How did you do this? How did you do this?" And they're like, "Man." And as they're looking at me, I'm looking behind me. You can't be talking to me. Somebody else, the closing agent or somebody, right?
Right.
And then I realized, oh, shoot, they're talking to me. And I said, "Do what?" Sometimes I'm very good at playing dumb. I does that quite a bit. But I realized that they didn't understand what I was doing with the way I had structured the deal from a lending standpoint, and also things like credit to closing and all these other things. And so what was interesting about that was I ended up buying 2 more properties from this guy, and the guy was impressed with what I was doing. He offered me a job. Now, this guy was very deep pockets, and when he offered me a job, I said, "Well, this is a smart ass, I think. I don't know if I can say that on the radio. I said something to a smart aleck. How about that?
Okay.
I said, I can't come work for you, but I can mentor you. And when I said that, I knew I shouldn't have said that. But I was acting like a hot shot at that time, and I was doing pretty well. And I took that property. This is the property that you mentioned in the intro, ironically enough, and it was a property that I took from 3.1 million or 3.15 million to 5.6. And what I did was I used a technique, and I teach this technique, but it's something called divide and conquer. And it's a way that you can change the value of a property by changing the way that a lender and an appraiser and a surveyor is going to look at the property. And you can change the price point very aggressively in most markets. Not in every market, but in most markets. And so when I did that, I took that, that is a gain of about $2.5 million, a lot of money. And so I took that originally as I refied the property. I didn't sell the property, but I refied the property.
Awesome.
And when I refied the property, what I didn't realize is I took that refied money that I got from my refinance, and I went out and bought more properties with it. A lot of properties.
Okay.
And what I realized was when I went to sell that property a couple of years later, I had this gain that I wasn't thinking about. And, this is where the nightmare begins. I wasn't thinking because I had other properties, and I was doing the same thing with them. We call it priming the pump. That's the technique we nickname it here in our offices. But so I was buying other properties, and when I sold this, $5.6 million property, then my gain is realized, right? You don't pay taxes on loan proceeds from the refinance. You pay taxes when the gain is realized, like a sale, for instance.
Right.
And so we sold the property. I figure I'm doing great. I exit out of that, and then comes tax season. And it's tax season, for some reason, I always do extensions because we got a lot of things going on with real estate and businesses and things. So, it's not that we're waiting till the 11th hour, but we kind of are, between everything that's going on. And on not the 11th hour, but, 10 hours and 58 minutes, my accountant is telling me what I'm owing for taxes.
Oh, cool.
And to my shock, it was a whopping bill, $500,000, actually over $500,000.
Whew.
And when you're not expecting a $500,000 check to be written, that becomes a nightmare, right?
Absolutely.
To a nightmare, and I'm like, what? I start. It's never me, right?
Yeah.
You're always questioning other people. It's like, my accountant's name is Lynn. I'm like, Lynn, well, what's going on? Are you okay? What's going on? Because in my mind, I think, every year I have an idea of what I'm going to pay in taxes. Even though, real estate and being an entrepreneur, and that's such wonderful tax write-offs, I'm pretty much paying every year, which is, in my mind, I think that's a good thing. I'm trying to take all the advantages I can within reason without, causing any red flags.
Right.
So I'm paying, and I have an idea of what I'm paying, so I have that set aside. But a $500,000 plus, that becomes a problem, right?
Right.
Instantly. Not only a problem, but a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so that's my story. So my lesson that I learned from that was anytime you are taking any kind of money from a property, always sit with your tax accountant, CPA specialist first, and talk about what the outcome of that is going to be. And if you can understand that, you can save yourself from these nightmares that you may have in real estate. Because, real estate's great for tax advantages, but, if you're good at real estate and you're good at driving value and income, and whether you're flipping properties or, buying whole, long-term rentals, things like that, you always want to make sure that you are staying in the good graces of the IRS and making sure that's the key. So anytime you are doing something big like that, taking money out for any reason, a refi, a sale, anything, make sure you're talking with your CPA, accountant, tax specialist first.
Awesome. That's a good lesson. Wow, that is a nightmare. That is definitely a nightmare story. Well, awesome. Very cool. So, John, I want to kind of switch gears here a little bit. You know, I'm a big goal setter. I love setting goals. I constantly read and listen to audiobooks and do what I can to make my mind stronger. I am, I guess, I don't know what the right word is. I've worked hard at structuring my brain to when I decide I want to achieve something and set a goal, I now gratefully just start the process where, you know, I can't say I've always been like that. You know, you dream about goals and you go to work every day and the year is over and you didn't do anything. Maybe you did very little towards achieving your goal. And that's probably the reality of how I started off when I was younger. But through a lot of perseverance and studying and reading and mind, kind of as Tony Robbins would say, reprogramming my mind, you know, now I'm more of a, I want to do this, and as Will Smith would say, you just decide, and then you just go do it. You decide you're hungry, you're going to go open the fridge and eat it. Well, now, thankfully, I decide I've got a goal, and I'm just going to go open the fridge and achieve that goal. But there's very few people that hit their goals with the consistency of the work behind it. And you're somebody who does consistently nail these large goals. So I want the listeners to kind of hear what you do to, I don't know, you know, we've never really talked about this before. We've mostly talked about real estate when we're together, but what do you do to keep your mind strong? Or are you just naturally gifted and born that way?
I don't know. I don't think it's the naturally gifted. Although, I tell my wife that I'm naturally gifted at things, and she doesn't believe that. But, you know, I think that, I think you got to want it. Number one, I have the privilege of talking to people all over the country, and one of the things I sense from people that are just making it and people that aren't is they gotta want it. Number one, if you don't want it, don't do it, man. Like I was listening, you know, I listened to different people. You said you listen to Tony Robbins and things. I listen to a lot of people. Gary Vaynerchuk is one of them, and you know, he talks about this. Where our odds of being here on this planet, 400 trillion to 1, 400 trillion to 1. And so I think about that. To me, that made an impression on me. To other people, it doesn't, and that's totally cool. But to me, I thought, man, 400 trillion to 1, you got to want something.
Yeah.
Those odds are great. You know, you got to do something that you're here. You can't make it through those odds and then just not do anything.
Right.
In my mind.
Yeah.
You can't make it 400 trillion to 1 and be a couch potato.
Right.
You wasted all that. You just won the $1 billion lottery, and you're doing nothing with it. You don't help people. You don't make your life better. You don't help your family. Anyway.
Yes.
So my thing was, I just wanted it. I really want to enjoy life. I'm on a different path right now. I've got a mission that's a little bit different from real estate investing, more on the entrepreneurial side, of course, the brokerage side, which you and I talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then my son, you know, I want to kind of do more things with him. So my goals are a little bit different now. But you got, whatever it is, you got to want it. If you don't want it, don't do it. That's cool. But if you do want it, then you've got to kind of systematically surround yourself with people that not only want it too, but have probably already been there and done that and had success. And then number 3 is you've got to take action steps on a consistent basis to get there. So when I was doing my, you know, a large amount of real estate investing previous, or building companies previous, that's all, I was tunnel vision. That's all I thought about. That's all my action steps were. You can't spread yourself too thin, because then you won't do anything. And then you've got to also have, even though you're tunnel vision, you've got to have a little balance. I'm writing a training program for real estate agents, and one of the chapters is chapter number 11. It's called Balance, Imbalance. And you got to have a little balance there. But as entrepreneurs, we're kind of always off balance, aren't we? We're
Right.
kind of leaning forward off balance.
Yeah.
And so you just have to understand that, and just make sure every action step you're taking is for that mission. You're going to fail. You're going to fail on the small level. You're going to fail on the large level. And just, you got to take that in stride. And, it's not that, it's not if you're going to fail, it's when you fail, and then it's what you do about it. But you might have a little bit of a setback, but it's how you get up, and it's how you take your next steps to ultimately move forward down the track.
Wonderful. I've heard you speak before on stage that you've got to know your why, and it's got to be a strong why, right? Money alone oftentimes is not a big enough why. It's putting your kid through college, so you need the money. So the real why is, bettering your children's life or whatever it may be. And I love that, because if your why isn't strong enough, when you do get knocked down and you hit the canvas, you've just been punched in the face and you've dropped to the ground. If your why isn't big enough, you're not going to want to stand back up and take the chance of that pain happening again in the next 5 to 10 seconds when Mike Tyson's throwing massive punches at you. Your why has to be so big that when you suffer these massive setbacks that you're like, I don't even care, I'm getting back up because this is for my kid, this is for my mom, this is for whoever. And so can you share a little bit of tips on how people, and this might sound weird like for listeners, but it's funny, John, I've had some conversations with friends of mine and I've asked them, what's your dream job? What if you could do anything, what would you do? And it's amazing how many people, if you could start your own company, what would you start? And it's amazing how many people that I've talked to said, oh, I have no idea. I just always thought I'd have a job, working a 9 to 5. I went to college and I pursued this because I was told that makes it, a comfortable income. And they've never even thought about if they could do a dream job, what would it be, let alone now what it's going to take to push them out of their comfort zone to go have a lifestyle pursuing something they want. So could you share some tips on how someone can discover maybe what their why is, a strong enough why? It's like you said earlier, you've got to want it, because money alone isn't going to, the want for just simply money is not going to do it. What do you share with people when you're like, hey, this is what you need to think about when you try to figure out a strong enough why to get off the ground when Mike Tyson's just pummeled you?
Yeah, Mike Tyson. Wow. Okay. Well, here's the deal. We live in a how-to universe right now. I mean, there's no other time in human history when we've had such information at our fingertips. I travel, and of course in the seminar business, and people ask me, do I need to go to a seminar? Should I be there? No, you don't have to be there. You can learn anything you want from the internet, for sure. Now, is it trustworthy? I don't know. It depends who you're learning it from, probably. Mm-hmm. But write this saying down. Write this saying down. Okay. This will be great for you and your listeners.
Okay.
In the age of 2020, which we're about to hit, right?
Yep.
This is the statement. If how-tos were enough, and we're in a how-to world right now, if how-tos were enough, we would all be rich, skinny, and happy. If how-tos were enough, we'd all be rich, skinny, and happy. So I know we live in this world of Google. I remember when my daughter Jordan, who Yosh, said to me for the first time, she's like, Dad, just Google it. And I told her to get to her room. I thought she was saying something profane to me. But, Google is not the answer. YouTube, same thing. All these sources, it's not, we have all that information. We have more power in our hands with our cell phone, our smartphone, and now our smart watches than ever before. We have more power in our cell phone than the power that took them to land on the moon in the 60s. And so think about that for a moment. That's not it. That has nothing to do whether you're going to succeed or not. But you've got to have a reason why, because that is your fuel to get you to the moon. You've got the technology in your spaceship, but if you don't have any fuel, you're going nowhere. So the fuel is not really even the why. It's not even the motivation, because motivation is something that fades. I mean, if you've ever done the New Year's resolution or the New Year's diet or, all of that like we have coming up.
Yep.
That motivation fades. But what's inspiring you? That's the question that we should be asking. What's the inspiration? And you nailed it on the head. You said your family, your children.
Yeah.
And think about that. What inspires me is not only that I have, my 3 children and now grandchildren. I can't believe this. I have grandchildren now. But that's not my motivation. But how about the fact, we always think forward, but how about the fact that we were somebody's child? We were somebody's grandchild. And, they were, the only reason that they did what they did before us was, we were the sole reason for that. All their trials, their challenges, their successes. The only reason they went through that was so that we would be here and have a chance. Now that we're here, not only can we can't let the future down, but we can't let the past down either because, they did a lot to get us here. However you got here, right?
Right.
And we go back to that number, 400 trillion to 1. That's a pretty good odds. You've already won by the time you got here.
Right.
So if how-tos were enough, if Google was enough, if YouTube was enough, if seminars were enough, if events were enough, books, we would all be rich, skinny, and happy. It has nothing to do with that. That's your technology. If you are not inspired, not motivated, because that fades, but if you're not inspired, in spirit is what that means. I read a lot by Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. I don't know if you've read any of his books, but he talks about being inspired in that root of in spirit, in our Creator's eyes. Not to go a totally different route here, but in spirit is a huge thing. Are we in spirit of creating? Are we in spirit of making ourselves better and everybody around us better and honoring the past, people that came here before us? That's what inspires me, and I think for me that's my fuel, and that's why I want to keep rolling and building and creating. But that's it. That's what I think is, in my opinion anyway, is something that has helped me along my journey, is to kind of remember that, think about that on an ongoing basis. Not only our future, but the people that really sacrificed, their generation or generations in the past for us to be here in the first place and give us a chance.
I love that. I love that. Because you're absolutely right. Motivation, you could watch a motivational video on YouTube and then 10 seconds later, the motivation's gone, in many cases. You get a phone call, you get on that phone call, and you forgot you were even motivated anymore. I love the idea of being inspired versus motivated, because then it's long-lasting. Awesome. So, John, we got about 3 minutes left on the show. What are your goals for 2020, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so, I'm continuing. We're growing a brokerage here, both on the brokerage side and the property management side. We're in Illinois, Indiana, Florida, looking to go into more states. Really focused on building the best training for that, for sales, for that environment. That's what's kind of inspiring to me now. There's a lot of technology out there, but if you're not inspired to make that sale, if you're not inspired to close that deal, that listing appointment, or on the buyer side, you're probably not going to have a lot of success. That I'm, also have a marketing company here. I don't know if we've touched base on that a lot.
Safari?
So we do marketing all over the country. What's that?
Safari, right? Isn't it called Safari?
Yeah. Yep, if you go to tellawildstory.com, that's our marketing company.
Awesome.
And we do everything from killer website design to sales funnels on the internet to wrapping vehicles to shirts and all kinds of stuff. But so we're growing that, and then I guess probably the biggest thing is just really making sure that I'm really honoring and spending quality time with my loved ones, friends, family. My children, now my grandchildren.
Nice.
And that's really what I'm focused on in 2020.
Wonderful. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, John. For all our listeners who are out there, if you've missed any part of this, you can go to our website, www.utahhomesweethome.com. You can find the links of our social media. We'll be playing. We've filmed this and recorded this, so you can re-listen to it there. If you want to reach out to me, you can at 801-810-4475. And for those of you who want to check out more of John's stuff, you can go to www.johndessauer.com. I'll spell his last name, Dessauer, johndessauer.com. You can learn more about John and all the amazing things he's doing. John, thanks so much for joining us on our show here today in Salt Lake City, Utah, all the way out from out in Chicago and Indiana, I should say. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It's always a pleasure, Yoshi. You're a true professional, so anytime.
Thank you, buddy. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll talk here shortly.
Sounds great.
Take care. Thank you. Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Yoshi Shiraki, the host of the real estate show, Utah Home Sweet Home, which airs every Saturday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. on K-Talk Radio 1640 a.m. I'm also the host of the show, $1 Million Home Sweet Home, where we tour $1 million homes right here in this beautiful state of Utah. I'm also a real estate agent, a real estate investor. I fix and flip houses, and I'm also a national public speaker. And on this channel, we're going to talk everything real estate as well as everything Utah, because this beautiful state has a lot to offer. And if you're looking to get to know more about real estate and real estate investing, or just purchasing your very first owner-occupied home, you've come to the right place.